Hello and welcome to another Cheeky Scientist Whiteboard Wednesday training. Today I thought I would talk about my biggest job search mistakes. A lot of you have asked me either on our Cheeky Scientist fan page or by message or by email, what were the biggest mistakes that I made and what did I learn from them? So I wanted to talk about 5 of them today. I've made a lot more than 5, but after getting my PhD, there was a lot of mistakes that I made trying to get my first job. The first mistake was relying on my academic advisor for job search advice. Of course, my academic advisor was a lifetime academic, had no idea how to get an industry job. All he knew was how to get an academic job. So he would say things like, get letters of recommendations, which don't really matter in industry. He'd say, make sure that you are listing your publications correctly or really using those to your advantage. But those don't really matter in industry. And it's not just my advisor. I asked my thesis committee, if they could help me get a job or if they knew anybody in industry who could help me. None of them knew anybody in industry in a full-time position. One person knew somebody doing an industrial postdoc, which I didn't want to do, and actually I don't recommend doing. So what I learned was that relying on lifetime academics who have never had an industry job to help me get hired was a mistake. And there are, most universities, and we've been to a lot of these universities, they have very low levels of funding in terms of training PhDs for non-academic positions. They give very bad advice, and they'll give this advice very confidently. They'll give very bad advice on how to get a job, right? So you might have a student services center, you might even have like a career development center. They have no idea what they're doing because they're led by lifetime academics. Doesn't make sense. That was the first thing that I realized. The second thing that I realized was never following up is a mistake. I thought that networking was going to a conference and collecting a bunch of business cards. And then I'd get that stack of business cards after a poster session or whatever it was, and I thought, surely somebody here is going to contact me and offer me a job. But of course they never did. And what I didn't do is I didn't follow up with any of those people. I didn't know it was my job to. It was uncomfortable. I didn't know how to follow up. I didn't know what to write. So this is a big part of why we created the Cheeky Scientist Association, is so that you could get access to a built-in network of people, because of my experience of building that network in industry is very, very hard to do, requires a lot of follow-up. So the distinction that I made was that when I go to an event and I meet somebody, that's connecting. That's not really networking. The networking process happens during the follow-up process. Networking is when you follow up, when you build that relationship. Now, during the follow-up, you have to be very careful not to just ask for things. Nobody wants to build a professional relationship or give a referral to somebody who they just met that asks them for a job right away or asks them for an informational interview right away. Instead, you want to add some value. And in the association, we talk about different ways you can add value. You can. We're not talking about giving them money, but we're talking about showing appreciation in the right way, commenting on something they've accomplished, even asking for their opinion. That's the type of value we're talking about. And that's number 3, is that I always asked. I remember when I was looking for a job, I uploaded hundreds of resumes to monster.com, indeed.com. I'd get an automated response, never hear anything back, and so I started getting into desperation mode because I was about to graduate. And when you're in desperation mode, it's like you're drowning, right? So you're clawing on anything to help you not drown. And that's when I started just asking people that I just met, hey, can you help me get a job? Hey, is there any jobs there? Nobody wants to build a relationship with somebody that's begging, somebody that's desperate. So you really, really have to avoid that. Number 4, not knowing my value. Now, one of our key messages at Cheeky Scientist is to remember your value as a PhD, because it's really, really important throughout the entire job search process. You have to know that as a PhD, you're a doctor of learning, right? And you have to know that because it helps you when you're going on an interview or when you're at a networking event. As a PhD, you're trained in how to ask really good questions. And that's the most important part of networking or building a relationship. Asking questions, not just talking at people. Here specifically, I have a story where I was talking to somebody about a job. It was the very first phone screen that I had with this company. And the person asked me what I was currently making. And I didn't know how to answer the question, so I told them, and they acted really surprised. They're like, wow, I can't believe you make that much, even though it was not a lot. And what this did to me is it made me feel bad or guilty for making as much as I was, even though it wasn't that much. And if you're a postdoc, you can probably understand what it's like not to make a lot of money. But some people act like you're making a lot of money, and it makes you feel guilty or weird or bad. What I didn't realize was this was just a negotiation technique, right? By saying, wow, I can't believe you make that much, you psychologically tell the person that you are not going to be offered more money than the number you just said. It's called anchoring. Okay, so this is something that's really, really important in terms of just your strategy, your negotiation strategies, but also just remembering your value. As a PhD, you are very valuable in industry. You're not valuable in academia. In fact, you'll be paid half of what you're worth in academia, but you're very valuable in industry. This lesson took me a long time to learn, and I want you to learn it much faster. You are valuable, just not in academia. Finally, ignoring sequence. Now, for me, a job search was, when I first started applying, it was filling out a resume, and then I figured, a team of people would review it, kind of like a peer-reviewed journal article, and then if they liked my resume, and how could they not, because I'm a PhD, they'd call me in for an interview, and I'd answer a few questions, right, almost like it was a test, and then if I passed the test, I'd be hired. This is not how it works anymore, right? Most job searches, most job leads, they start with a phone screen. And even before that, they'll start with a referral in most cases, not with somebody reading your application. Most applications are going into applicant tracking system software, and they're never getting in front of an actual person. The only resumes that get in front of actual people are those that are referred from another employee or for somebody else. And the whole sequence will start with a phone screen. Things are very different now than they used to be, and if you don't understand it, it's going to be very hard for you to get hired. And if you're struggling to get hired, it's because you're not following the right sequence. And I didn't realize there were so many different pieces of the puzzle of getting hired. Like getting hired at McDonald's, very easy. Fill out a resume online, right? They'll bring you in for an interview. Getting hired into a top job at a biotech company or an engineering company or a pharmaceutical company, very different, lots of steps involved. Phone screens, video interviews, site visits, presentations, very, very complex. And you have to understand how all of these pieces fit together. It's an overall blueprint. Now the good news is tomorrow I'm going to be talking about this blueprint, specifically on getting your resume written for industry positions, and then how to get your resume into the hands of people who will read it and who will call you for a phone screen. Right, so if you're trying to get a job in industry, I'm doing a free webinar tomorrow where I'll talk more about all of these topics, and I'll talk a lot about resumes specifically, a lot about phone screens. It's tomorrow, Thursday the 10th, at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'll put a link for it on this video. If you have questions about it, please ask them here. The final thing I want to mention is make sure you make your job search a priority. That's part of the sequence. Yes, as an academic PhD, whether you're getting your PhD or doing a postdoc, you are getting pressured to publish. You are getting pressured to get grants. But guess what? If you know you want to go into industry, you have to make getting an industry job, that job search, your top priority. It doesn't mean that you completely blow off publications or grants, but realize that once you're in industry, those things aren't going to matter. You have to start carving out time for your job search. You have to take it seriously. So again, if you have questions on this, please ask them in a comment on this post. I'll see you next week with another Whiteboard Wednesday. Check out our free webinar tomorrow. It's live. You have to register to attend at 1 p.m., 9 p.m. Eastern on May 10th, Thursday, tomorrow, depending on when you're watching this video. Thank you.